pace has dropped on yet another version of Soccer Down Here. It is Thursday Thoughts for Soccer's morning show. Very, very busy show. Jared, we are officially in the no dilly, no dally zone this morning because we are like Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson on the tarmac for this morning. It is stacked. It is going backwards. 10:30, Jon Arnold is coming on to talk CONCACAF, MLS, and FC Dallas. We are efforting a special golden ticket guest at 10 o'clock. Glenn Davis joining us at the bottom of the hour to talk Houston and MLS and anything on his mind. But first, wasting no time, you hit the magic button. And that means that Lucas Panzica drops by, and he's going to talk about Nashville and anything else. We're trying to get the technology figured out, Lucas, to where I can actually tell people what to do when it comes to being seen here on Twitch for the morning show. So that's what we're kind of getting into. So good early morning to you before you get to work.
Good morning, John. I appreciate you not reaching me out to ask for help with that, because I think people assume because of my age, because I'm still in my 20s, that I'm smart. And that's not always the case. So I appreciate you not making that assumption.
Right. Lucas is with our friends at 104.5 FM up in Nashville. And so he's kind of busy. He's a part of the midday show and jack of all trades, and you get to listen to him with a bunch of different things. And so we figured before he actually goes into work at 104.5 The Zone in Nashville to talk, about Sabertooth Tigers and anything else that's going on the day, the SEC basketball stuff, we figured we'd bring him in to talk Nashville. So what is the vibe right now after She Believes Cup? Was it Geodis? You're getting ready for Nashville and everyone in. What's the overall vibe heading into the season coming into this weekend?
It's good. I mean, it was good to be back in Geodis Park. You know, Nashville SC is building off of what they've done over the last few years. Continuity is kind of the theme going into this season. They made some moves in the offseason. They acquire Fafa Pico from Houston, who's been a fairly productive winger in MLS over the past couple of years. At this point, he's actually, today's his birthday, turning 32 years old, and he's coming in as an experienced guy to inject some pace.
And so, of course, we get our first
Gremlin. But there's a lot of what happened?
No,
you get Robo Lucas there?
Yeah, we got Robo Lucas for a second, but you were getting into the birthday boy.
Yeah, Fafa Pico, the biggest offseason acquisition Nashville made. But overall, the vibe is one of running it back, John. That same foundation that has helped Nashville kind of raise their floor of being above the playoff line in each of their first 3 years of being in MLS, and then just that stardom of Hani Mukhtar and Walker Zimmerman just raising the level of what Nashville is capable of, just trying to add to those pieces. It was a relatively quiet offseason, but Fafa Pico, the biggest addition, and the vibe is good. The man in black jerseys are out. Fans are buying them. They're going to be wearing them on Saturday, be a blackout at Geodis Park, and people are pumped, man. A lot of firsts in the short history of Nashville SC, and so here's the first ever season opener at Geodis Park coming up Saturday.
Jared Smith for Lucas Panzica.
Hey, good morning, Lucas. Looking at the structure of Nashville going into this year, it's been that question of, we know what Hani Mukhtar is at this point. I think everyone on this continent knows what Hani Mukhtar is at this point. What's just the level of excitement in terms of getting a strike partner with him, someone up top who can, fill that void that Akiloba didn't hit the heights that people wanted him to, but the excitement of, if you get someone to hit those heights, what Nashville could be.
Look, I think there's no question. Like, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that Hani Mukhtar needs to play probably close to that MVP level again for Nashville to be a contender this year. I don't think, anybody be messing around and telling you that that's not the case. But Fafa Pico, a guy that not only can help shoulder that burden when it comes to goals and assists, which Hani has so consistently led the way in for Nashville. The stat that I was looking at this week, Hani Mukhtar is responsible for 53% of Nashville's goals that he's either scored or assisted in the history of Nashville Soccer Club, which he's been here for the entirety of, which is just insanity. So Fafa Pico comes in, and not only does he help shoulder that burden on the wing, but it allows a guy like Randall Leal as well to kind of tuck a little more centrally and sort of find those pockets and see what more they can create through the central part of the field, not just down the flanks, not just with the ball at Hani Mukhtar's feet. And then needing guys like CJ Sapong and Teal Bunbury that are a year older, but experienced guys to find the back of the net when given the opportunity.
All right, and so now Nashville is also back in the Eastern Conference, so you get all your rivalries back. You're back with Atlanta. You're back with Nashville. You're back in the Eastern Conference after time in the West. How does that sit with everybody?
Yeah, look, the Western Conference was a bit of a challenge for Nashville last year, especially at the start. I mean, Geodis Park opened up May 1st. So the first 8 games of the season, Nashville's on the road. A lot of those games were on the West Coast. They were in San Jose. They were in Portland. They were in Seattle. So it was tough. You know, it was like this 8-game preseason, but it wasn't a preseason. Every game counted. The points counted just as much as the home games. But still, it felt like, in a way, it felt like May 1st was the okay, now the season feels like it's getting started for Nashville SC after being on the road for, over 2 months. But back in the Eastern Conference, I think there's a little bit of a level of comfort there. They're really familiar with a lot of the opponents. Feels like Nashville and Atlanta have gone head-to-head plenty of times, despite the fact that they haven't shared a conference. Obviously, there was the Open Cup matchup last year that added a game, but Orlando City and Nashville have had battles. They played in the Open Cup last year as well, a thriller that went to extra time, and Orlando City obviously ends up winning. They go on to win the whole thing. So Nashville sort of maintained these relationships with these Eastern Conference clubs, and it feels like in a way they're kind of picking up where they left off. But the Eastern Conference is fascinating this year because when you look at contenders right now, it's sort of Philadelphia Union and everybody else, right? As far as what you know about these teams. But anything can happen. NYCFC, Nashville's opponent on Saturday, with all these new pieces, something could click there and they could sort of uphold that standard that they've managed to have since the beginning, really, despite all the moving parts and the turnover they've had on their touchline and on the field. So the Eastern Conference is really fascinating, but there's no doubt that it makes things a little bit easier from a traveling perspective for Nashville as well.
Yeah, I was about to ask. Like, it's that thing with MLS that other leagues don't. Most other leagues, some do. Most of them don't have to deal with just traveling 2,000 miles to play a season game. Yeah. No big deal. In Europe, they make a big deal about that. In Champions League, we had to travel 1,500 miles for the first leg. Okay, that's called Tuesday here.
How many time zones? Yeah.
To the point of those rivalries you talked about, Atlanta and Nashville have a rivalry. I mean, we know about it. Going back to some heartbreaking games for the people in Atlanta. How does that rivalry feel for Nashville fans with Charlotte? And you're going to see Charlotte more now. We know about the Orlando thing. I mean, how strong is it for the likes of a Cincinnati team that should be better and are geographically closer than I think people realize, and through their past are closer?
I think when you're trying to build a rivalry, the only thing in my mind that can really build the rivalry from the roots on up is just games and dramatic games over the course of a number of years, right? And Nashville has that with Cincinnati more than anybody else, going back to the USL days. That was a really heated rivalry in the USL days of Nashville SC and FC Cincinnati, and that's obviously carried over, and they're back sharing a conference. So I'd say that's kind of at the top of the list especially for the Nashville SC fans that have been around since the USL days in Music City. And it's certainly more intriguing now with Cincinnati and the huge step that they took last year and the raised expectations going into 2023 with Noonan in there still getting his feet under him and trying to just raise that level after 3 just horrendous seasons up there in the Queen City. But there's no doubt that Atlanta is a big part of that too. And there is history tied in there. There is Nashville SC history tied in with Atlanta with that first ever MLS game. Nobody's going to forget that first game in 2020 at Nissan Stadium in February before the COVID pandemic shut everything down. Just what that felt like, that first taste of Major League Soccer in Nashville with 60,000 people at Nissan Stadium and Atlanta United coming in and sort of, kind of stealing the party in a way, winning 2-1. Beating Nashville SC on that opening day. So it's interesting because you want to formulate these rivalries, right? You want to add juice to them and you want to talk them up. But to me, the only thing that can do that is games and heated matchups over a number of years. Nashville just has that with Cincinnati more than anybody else. But there's no doubt that it's going to get to that point pretty soon with Atlanta if it hasn't already, I think.
The jury of 13 over at MLSsoccer.com is all over the place when it comes to Nashville and what they see. You've got a 5, you've got a 6, you've got a 4. I mean, literally every number it seems like is hit between 4 and 12 when it comes to the Eastern Conference with the jury of 13. 10, 11, 12, that seems a little dark for me. I know the expectations for Gary Smith and Nashville are always pretty high. How in the revisited Eastern Conference are you looking at Nashville coming into this season?
I'm looking at the continued floor of being a playoff team. I think that's the absolute baseline expectation for Nashville SC with this foundation, with some of the star power they believe they have at every level, especially with Hani Mukhtar and Walker Zimmerman. There's no question that the expectation should be to get into the playoffs, and then from there to see what happens. And then at that point, it's about, can they find some added depth? Can they find some secondary scoring this year that maybe they didn't find as much of last year with how the Ake Loba situation turned out? Those are the questions that we, are yet to be answered. I don't know what that's going to look like in October. I know that right now it's the preseason. It's been a really positive preseason for Nashville. They beat Philadelphia Union. They beat FC Cincinnati. And I know it's preseason and there's trialists on the field and all of those things, but the vibes are really good at the moment, as they are probably for most MLS teams going into the start of the season. But there is no doubt, John, the expectation for this team is to be above the playoff line. Now, how comfortably above the playoff line, that's just up to who you ask, whether it's media or fans or members of the club. But there is no doubt everybody will be on the same page that Nashville fully expects to be in the postseason and pushing for, home playoff games in the Eastern Conference.
As far as looking at this roster construction, for those of us who don't follow it every day, if we would like to appear smart to other people, who are some kind of under the radar guys? We know the stars of Nashville. Who are some of the under radar guys who we should be keeping an eye on who could really pop off this year for Nashville?
Yeah, so you're right. People will know the likes of Hani Mukhtar and Zimmerman and Shaq Moore, and even a guy like Dan Lovitz that's just been in this league for so long. But I've named 3 out of the 4 likely starters on that back line. To partner with Walker Zimmerman, Dave Romney has been such a mainstay for Nashville SC since they acquired him from LA Galaxy right at the beginning of that inaugural MLS campaign. Well, he's shipped off to New England Revolution, and Jack Marr, the draft pick out of Indiana, who really stepped up his playing time, most career starts he's ever had in his third year as a pro in 2022. I think the onus will be on him to step up with that partnership alongside Walker Zimmerman. Now they bring along Nick Dupuis from LA Galaxy, a younger defender that's kind of followed in the footsteps of Romney. But I think this is Jack Marr's job to lose with that center back position next to Walker Zimmerman. That's a name to keep an eye on for a partnership Nashville hopes will continue on for several years and will just be a seamless transition. And other than that, this team is interesting because there's so many veterans across the board. So I don't need to tell you about who Dax McCarty is. I don't need to tell most people about Anibal Godoy, with all the years he spent in San Jose and in this league and with Panama's national team. So really, I'd stick with Marr on the back line if you're looking at younger guys that people are still getting to know in this league. And then on the left side, at least I believe he'll play on the left side, Jacob Schaffelberg, who they got on loan from Toronto last year with the option to buy, and they go with that option. He is he's with Nashville for the next few years. Young, pacey winger on the left side that really injected a spark. Toronto just, with all the star power they signed over from Europe, they offload Schaffelberg to Nashville, and Nashville were the beneficiaries of that. And now with the continuity of his first preseason in Music City, I think Schaffelberg will play a huge role in Nashville's attack this year, just crashing down the left flank.
All right, another couple of minutes here with Lucas Panzica at 104.5 The Zone in Nashville as we catch up on Nashville, kind of going rapid fire around the league today with all of our guests. You mentioned the playoffs, and I don't think we can let any of our guests go today without asking about what you think about the new playoff format, turning very, very NBA-ish with an 8-9 play-in game and the rounds of 3 and then only going solos all the way through. When that broke, what were your initial thoughts on the new playoff format?
I was torn on it because, understanding from the jump that it's a situation with Apple TV, right? Wanting more playoff games and just part of that whole deal. So there's a part of me that feels like, okay, it's just kind of a necessary thing. And then there's another part of me that it feels like it's like changes to make changes. Like who's asking for this, right? Who's asking to expand the number of teams that make the postseason, especially for, so many franchises out there and so many probably frustrated fan bases across the league that feel like there's too much leadership in MLS that says, okay, made the postseason. Good job, everybody. Right. And then on to the next. Now you just expand the number of teams that can feel that way. And that's not to say everybody feels that way. Teams want to win, but certainly ambitions differ in any league, in any sport in the United States. And so maybe the amount of frustrated fan bases in that aspect will uptick for those teams that just slide into that 8 and 9 spot year in and year out and are good with it because they made the playoffs and that was the goal. going into the season. So I'm torn on it. I mean, what was y'all's initial thoughts? There you go. All right, that's it. You don't need to tell. You really don't need to say anything else.
I'm very much a fan of two legs in my conference semifinals and my conference finals. I'm okay if you want to get weird and have two legs in the final. I'd be cool with it. But yeah, I don't love one-off games just because I like the feeling and the drama of that's 90 minutes down. Oh, we have to do this again in another building, in another hostile situation. We were discussing yesterday that with the 3 games, if these go to 3 games in that first round, take the over on cards, because after seeing each other 3 times in a row, they're going to want to kill each other.
No doubt. I mean, let's look at some silver linings, right? Let's say you get let's say you get an El Trafico with that 3-game matchup. Like, who wouldn't want to see that, right? Like that. So there are certain ways that it can play out. They're like, okay, let's buckle up. This is going to be fun. But at the same time, I get the frustrations of like, what are we doing here? Who's really asking for this? Who's standing on the table saying, no, we need 9 playoff teams per conference?
Well, and the way that I was kind of looking at it, yes, I don't mind the best of 3 5-pointer up front, but I would have liked in the semis and the final to go to 2 legs. So that way, at least you're introducing more matches as you go forward. I'm hoping that this initial idea for the playoff entry was just the first step. And they didn't want to just jam all of these games in at once and go, okay, we're going to go best of 3. And this is the week before the season, is the week of the season starting. We're going to go best of 3 in the first round. Then we're going to get 2 games, a home and away in the semifinals and the finals. And we're going to have, 1 at the end. I mean, coaches would be, pulling what's left of their hair out if they saw a maximum of, say, 8 games in a postseason to go with a regular season, to go with the Leagues Cup, to go with an Open Cup. And you're getting this information now. So I'm hoping that this is in stages. I get it because I know that Apple TV wants more inventory to try to attract folks and sell things and all that. I get that this is TV motivated or stream service motivated, but I was looking for 2 legs. I wanted 2 legs the later we went. Yeah,
that's just that balance of you got to understand why it's happening, but you don't have to like it. That's okay.
So you're saying it's like vegetables?
Yes, exactly like vegetables.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So if it was a vegetable, how would this playoff format go with you? For if you're at a restaurant and you're forced to have something on your plate, what is Lucas Panzica staring at on that plate? And he's going to sit there and go, yeah, I don't know. I may not eat it, or if I'm going to eat it, I'm not going to like it.
You're asking the wrong guy there, because there is nothing on that list for me. Like, there is literally nothing. I love my vegetables, John. I love it. I mean, it is not a matter of like me, like, I eat my vegetables. What, you don't eat your vegetables? Like, no, it's just whatever you put in front of me, I'm going to eat it. If you're putting spinach in front of me, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, it doesn't matter. Or just like a 13-ounce steak with nothing else, that's fine too. You might have the wrong audience for a question like that, because whatever you put in front of me or whatever you say, I would look at and I'd be like, you're going to eat that?
Wow, man. Jarrett, we have come across part of the younger generation that's going to be eating anything that's put in front of them.
Yeah, you work with one every day, bud.
I work with 2 folks that are younger. All right, Lucas, time.
No. I mean, you work with people who will eat just about anything put in front of them.
Oh, yeah, I will work with folks that will eat. Okay, Lucas, time for the plug. Thanks for coming on with us. How do they keep in touch with you on the media that is social and what you're doing up there in Nashville at 104.5? How do they do it?
Yeah, at Lucas Panzica on Twitter. We're on 10 to 1 every single day on 104.5. The Zone, the Buck Rising Show is where you can find me. A lot of Titans talk, a lot of Vols talk, but season kicks off on Saturday, and I can't wait to be in the house when they host NYCFC, who, by the way, fascinated to see what NYCFC looks like this weekend and this season with the offseason of goodbyes that they had, but still feels like that standard hasn't changed for them. So can't wait to see how that all plays out. And just so happy that MLS is finally back. It only been a few months, but it feels like it's been too long.
Yeah, we had Glenn Crooks on the show yesterday, and he broke down everything with NYCFC for us. Lucas, obviously, anytime there's anything going on that you want to talk about, just elbow your way in, and we will bring you forward here on the show. Thanks for hanging out with us here on SDH Bat and Leadoff on a very busy Thursday, breaking down Nashville and your thoughts on Major League Soccer.
Guys, so glad to do it anytime, and look forward to seeing you guys in Music City in a couple of months.
You got it. Lucas
Sounds good.
There it is, Lucas Panzica with 104.5 at the Zone, batting leadoff for us this morning. And, and yes, and Coco, I think you're correct. We do not say MLS is back around here. Well, that is a
people in Portland are fine with it.
Yeah, they are, but all the Atlanta United fans that are here, they're like, nope, we don't. Those 3 words do not exist. They're not used in a hashtag. They are not used with anything like that at all.
I mean, shoes on the other foot, man, because like people in Portland don't want to talk about the 2018 MLS Cup final. People in Atlanta love talking about the 2018 MLS Cup final. Shoes on the other foot.
Yes.
Also, you can take a little shot and throw that out of the MLS's back tournament, because Orlando got to the top of the mountain and then got unceremoniously kicked off all the way back to the bottom.
Yes. And Michael Head, who was great to see Michael and the better half last night at Wild Leap with the great conversation that we had with Garth Lagerwey. If you missed that, that's on the network. Michael is programming things already for the playoffs. The league is going to make LAFC and LAG and NYCFC and Red Bulls as first-round playoff series. Michael Head as TV programmer. He's already got the helicopters warming up. So he's Coco, wait. MLS released the script for this year?
Can I get some behind-the-scenes discussions of can I get LAFC and the Galaxy doing interviews in gorilla position then? Is that a thing we can do?
Yeah, that'd be great. Bam with the hashtag MLS is now. I think that's probably accurate. I like that. But if we got the all or nothing behind the scenes, or the Wrexhamish version of MLS releasing the script, that would be pretty good. Bam is not a fan of a 3-match El Trafico. He says that can get.
That's because it's going to break him.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't blame him, but it's going to break him. It's going to break a lot of people. I mean, look at the value that's going to be had from if you are able to take let's say you're able to win your matchup in 2 games. Especially imagine if you absolutely. Imagine if you go in there and you absolutely obliterate someone in game 1. You drop a 5-0.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, imagine if you just drop a 5-0 bomb on somebody in game 1, and then you get to coast in game 2, whereas whoever you're playing has to play 3 just knockdown, drag out bloodbaths.
Yeah,
the benefit is there for it. It's just going to be weird for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is that if you really want to advance, you take care of your business early in that first round, best of 3. You do your best to push through in those first 2 matches, and you get your 6 points. You get out the door. That's what you're hunting for with that. And obviously, with Glenn Davis coming up, hopefully in just a little bit, we will catch up with Glenn, find out what he thinks about the MLS playoff format, what he thinks about the Western Conference, what's going on with Houston, with Ben Olsen now in charge, and new ownership and all these kinds of things. And Scarves and Spikes, by the way, with the playoff series, insert Oprah Winfrey gif. I'm guessing, and you get a playoff game, and you get a playoff game, and you get a playoff series, and all of that.
And to Coco's point about, imagine playing the team that has to play Philly for 3 games. Imagine if it's Philly and Red Bulls for 3 games.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it.
Philly probably wins that, maybe in 2 games. Those are just going to be 2 ugly-ass games to watch.
Yes, no doubt about it. And I saw the man in the queue. He took a sip from his morning beverage. We're going to bring him in. One of the great ambassadors of the sport. It is Glenn Davis. Glenn, as always, great to have you on, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us here on SDH.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, guys, as always.
John here and Jarrett here with you there. By the way, what is in the mug and what is on the mug this morning?
It's just it's a good dark coffee with a little whiskey.
Okay, so fairly normal. And there's because I mean
this was a gift from my sister. I don't know. This is some kind of, I don't know what that is.
Glenn Davis hopping on for
me. It's a vessel for drinking coffee.
There you go. ESPN 975 in Houston. And as always, soccer matters. And I have my T-shirt is as a part of the appreciation, because I will say this
Did
to
you buy one? I really thank you for that's amazing that you did that. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
A great charity, so thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And I will tell anyone that comes across my bow that you are one of the tremendous ambassadors for the sport here in this country. And anytime that we get the chance to catch up with you, it's really cool because we get your perspective on everything. And when you look at the season coming in, news broke a couple days ago about this new playoff format. And I want to start here with you. Obviously, we'll talk about Houston and everything else coming down the pike. But when the new playoff format came online, what were your initial thoughts?
Additional volume of games and content for the television deal, I think. I've always straddled the commercial side of it with consequence, right? 62% of your teams make the playoffs. That's a lot. I just wonder how that affects coaches and putting together teams for a season. I don't think it really extends urgency that much. I do understand the concept of keeping everybody in it as long as you can to keep fan bases alive and excited and interested. But, I'm all about the competition. So 62% getting in, I don't know. That seems a little bit too much to me. But, the 3-game, I heard you guys talking about the 3 games that occur in round 1 after 8 and 9 will play a single elimination playoff. I think we learned last year, single elimination, people love it. But like I said, I think content is needed. So it's the balance between the commercial aspect of the game and the competitive. And that's always a challenge. And you don't want to lose the competitive because you could lose fans.
Jared Smith for Glenn Davis.
So, Glenn, it's been a weird progress in the state of Texas now, with Austin being a part of everything and growing way faster in terms of the on-the-field product than I think a lot of us expected. With Houston, this kind of feels like from the outside, like it's a big reset, bringing in a lifer in Ben Olsen. What's been the vibe around the fan base building up to this season?
Yeah, well, it has been a big reset for a lot of years now. I mean, I just very quickly will, remind anybody that's listening out of market that, we were gifted the San Jose Earthquakes, and I make sure that people understand it was gifted. Okay. Not that Houston wasn't a right market to bring soccer to, but I know that created some problems in San Jose. That wasn't our fault down here that we got gifted the team. And it was never really sustained, honestly, through leadership and ownership. So, it seems like it's a perpetual reset and reboot, right? But the good thing is now I think there's more optimism with the new owner, Ted Siegel. They have positions that have been created on the competitive side that weren't here for a lot of years that other teams had. And you just kind of sat here going, how are we competing without these basic elements? How are we competing with your second team in the Rio Grande Valley 6 hours away? I mean, you're not competing. You can say you are, but you're not. But I think they're in the right direction as far as creating these new positions. There's more spend on that. They've freshened up the stadium. But at the end of the day, we all know the product on the field is ultra important. This is a market that's going to demand, if you want the authentic soccer fan, creative, thoughtful, purposeful, exciting soccer, right? So that's the question. We've had a lot of managers come in and out, and a lot of change this year, which I think is got people pretty excited. On the other hand, there's also a lot of people just kind of sitting back like this going, okay, let's see. Because, we've kind of heard a lot of the same things before.
I was going to say, and it's like you're reading my notes here, there seems to be this balance.
I am.
There seems to be this balance of optimism and frustration, and that it's almost like trying to figure out how to drive a clutch in a car for the first time. If you don't know how to drive the clutch, the car is going to hiccup its way down the road. So is it fair to say that it's like, yeah, you got to show me, I want to be a part of this, but I'm not sure yet, and it's going to take a while for this engine to get warm when it comes to this season if things are successful with Ben Olsen.
Yeah, this is an interesting soccer market. I mean, there are people from all over the world in this city, and yet our MLS product really, the relevancy factor now, everybody's working on trying to get that to a better level here, and I think the organization is trying to do that now with new hires and things. Look, Austin blew the MLS status out of the ground, right? They're the gold standard, even though they've only gone into year 3 now. But, in a way, and I say this very respectfully, but healthy shaming is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly from, attendance and relevancy, and, you can condition it any way you want. Oh, there's no pro team in Austin. It doesn't matter. They're putting 20-something thousand people in their stadium every game. And that means other markets have to lift the bar. So I think it's one of the best things that could have happened to Texas when it comes to soccer is, number one, create these rivalries, hopefully. But number two, up the game of Houston and Dallas, right? Simple.
So we have a number of degenerates who follow us on a daily basis, who, when we're not watching local games or whatever their local fan affiliation is, they'll find games anywhere, anytime. If they stumble upon a Houston game, who are some of maybe the under the radar guys that they should be keeping an eye on if they stumble upon a Houston game late at night and it gets weird?
Coming into 2023, yeah. So, obviously, look, this team is finally going to get built around Hector Herrera. There was that whole albatross last year, him in the World Cup and making sure he was healthy going to the World Cup. That was a sensitive situation. The World Cup's over. It's time for Hector Herrera to stand up and be the designated player he's supposed to be here in Houston. I think they need to demand that out of him. Coco Carrasquilla, a young Panamanian in midfield, I think is going to be the guy trying to drive things forward. But for me, the two biggest pieces that you have to put a circle around, this team couldn't create chances last year. It couldn't support the striker who was a DP, Sebas Ferreira from Paraguay. Who I think is a good striker. He still scored 13 goals, did not have a lot of support. So the two guys I think that I've put a circle around that I believe have to help in the, whatever you want to call it, playmaking, chance creating, whatever you want to call it, is a young guy named Amin Bassi from, he's a French-Moroccan descent from French League 2. And the other one is Ivan Franco, who's on loan from Libertad in Paraguay. I think they got to hit on one out of two of these. They have to be able to create more chances, get more people into the penalty box, become more dangerous. They were low end in earning corners and set pieces and free kicks, and that's just simply a validation of the fact that you don't really get into the final third enough. And I think with these two guys, they're going to hope to get into the final third. So those signings have got to hit, I think, in my opinion.
Looking at the jury of 13, as we have this week at MLSsoccer.com, where the 13 individuals that are there try to come up with their opinions for placing and where they think folks are going to be this season. They were looking at the Dynamo in double digits, anywhere from 10 to 14 in the West. When it comes to your appraisal, if things go the way, perfect world, where would you see the Dynamo at the end of this season in the Western Conference? How would you see things shaking out?
Like you said, there's a lot of unknown based on signings that I have not watched a lot. I was at the preseason game. I'm not trying to avoid the question here, but I think it really is going to depend on how cohesive this team can get. But, the way MLS is set up, you have a lot of time to try and pull it together. So I think it's them battling 7, 8, 9, that area in the West. That's kind of a safe bet based on what has happened in recent times. You got a lot of change here, and that can't be an excuse anymore because the fans have heard that over and over. But on the other hand, putting teams together is not an easy thing. It's a bit of a science. We all know that. Pieces got to come together. Leadership has to be there. staffs have to produce together. Everybody's got to pull the oars in the same direction. And players have to adapt to a new league from foreign countries. And essentially, I think the roster looks better. I think it seems to be a more talented roster. They set out Pat Onstad and Ben Olsen and these guys, Asher Mendelson. They set out to, one of their things they've repeatedly said is, we're trying to sign winners, right? So Franco Escobar coming, from Atlanta and LAFC, it's a guy that's won cups. There was a lot of focus and talk about that. And I think, when you're down as long as the Dynamo have been down as a roster, you got guys that, even though they're trying, their efforts are to be as professional as possible, when you've been beaten down that long mentally, there's a fatigue there that I think even the players sometimes, when they're in it, don't know how to get out of it. And the best thing for them is to be moved on to another club, right? And now you got guys in that are fresh attitude. They don't really know a whole lot about the past, except that they haven't made the playoffs. So I think from a standpoint of cleansing yourself from the old mentality and, a lower bar with new guys that have come in on rosters that have won things, I think that's important.
And you were talking a bit about getting the authentic fan in Houston, and you've been there for a while. You know kind of the heartbeat of it. For those of us that just kind of see it from the outside, and we do think, wow, Houston feels like it should be a huge market. What do you think the ceiling is for that market if everything just clicked and it became the power that, we wonder if it could be?
Look, I'm going to say that these games should be sold out. I'm sorry. I don't care about the heat. I don't care about the fact that there are other pro teams here. Tired of all that. Tired of hearing about all the excuses of why it can't happen. This is a city of 8.5 million people. And every time I get on the road, I think those numbers are climbing because the traffic is becoming unbelievable down here. Sure that I time my day where I'm looking for the low end traffic hours to go do things, but I just don't want to hear the excuses anymore. I came here to play professional soccer in the 80s. And as you guys know, that was a lot different. I've run a youth club here. I love the soccer community here because of its diversity. And I really think that's the play for me. When we did a rebrand a couple years ago, and that's not under the current ownership, which was an NBA-oriented rebrand, and I was just, honestly, I was like a deer in a headlight. I just was like, huh? Is this really happening? We're trying to be like the NBA when we're a city of authentic soccer fans. So that's Pandora's box. If you can open that up through playing style, a quality team, a winning team, sky's the limit here when it comes to that. But the ideas have to get creative. I think there's some more of that coming out now. There's some originality coming out of the club. But I really want to see a big reach to the authentic soccer fan and, the celebration of the sport globally, because it's a global city. This is why we have the World Cup coming here. Nobody brought the World Cup here. The fans of Houston brought the World Cup here because whenever there's international content, it blows it out of the water, right? That's why the World Cup is coming to Houston in 2026. Everybody's going to stake their claim as to why it's here. For me, it's simply the fan, the passion for the game. You can drive around and see people playing everywhere. I mean, the other day I was in traffic and there was a little island in between the two streets I was on. And here are these guys with two small goals. And they're, I'm like in traffic watching this thing and go, man, this is good entertainment. You got every body type out there. Guys are kicking each other. I mean, it was incredible. And I'm like, well, at least I have something to look at while I'm sitting here in traffic. But it was almost a little bit of the theater of the bizarre because it was just on this little strip of grass in the middle of, nowhere. And that to me kind of epitomizes soccer in Houston. But we got to get down to that level as well. We got to go into those areas. We just can't remain in this safe cocoon. We got to get out there.
Glenn Davis hanging out with us because Soccer Matters here on SDH on Thursday and Thursday Thoughts. All right, so let's go down this rabbit hole for a second. If I anointed you soccer czar of Houston and the metropolitan area, how would you orient soccer, whether it's grassroots up or professional down, to where that building is sold out every day, to where the representation that is there for Houston can be there for that MLS franchise. How would you sit there and say, okay, here's my 5-point plan, or however many points you want to make sure that that building is full and that Houston is represented the way that you feel that it should be?
Yeah, that would take a long answer. I'll try to give you a cliff notes. I think you have to do everything you can to reach out to the authentic community. So that means you have to go in there. You got to get on the ground. I know a lot of the leaders in these areas, whether it's the Nigerian community, the Hispanic community, which, by the way, is very unique and different from a Salvadorian to a Mexican to a Paraguayan. We forget all that. But, you can make decisions that are very authentic, soccer oriented to go along with, yes, we need youth, by the way, always. We need youth. We need freshness. We need excitement. But authentic soccer fans that have come from all over the globe will need a different type of reach. And I think right now the Dynamo have to, whether it's their relationship with the youth community, they have to extend the olive branch. You maybe even are so confident that you might admit some past mistakes, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying you got something wrong. Nobody gets everything right. I don't understand why we're always so protective of, not admitting that maybe we did something wrong. Okay, here's how we correct it. Here's the solution. But it would take a comprehensive overhaul of ideas and looking at our international community, because it's rich. It's rich. It's exciting. It's diverse. And, I'm hoping this year we're going to see people from a lot of these different ethnic communities and nationalities coming out to the game.
I'm glad you touched on it, because it is more diverse than just Latin communities. It does go by country and culture, and it's tough to balance it all. And it feels like a fool's errand to just say, well, it's all one Latin community. No, it's broken down pretty damn strictly, and even culturally beyond borders. Wanted to get into the rest of the Western Conference with you for a moment as well, of who are you, because that's who you're going to see more than those of us on the East Coast. Who are you looking at in the West to really be the team to look out for? I mean, aside from maybe an LAFC, who I guess we're all expecting.
Yeah, and LAFC's got a lot of change. So I think that's going to be interesting to see, where they go. They still have to make some signings, I think, based on who they've lost. Chucho's, I think, gone. But look, so I have a radio show in Austin, so I'm a little bit more dialed in and drilled down on Austin. I think this is going to be a very different season for them. In year one, I know they were getting killed in transition and conceding a ton of goals. But in year one, I saw Josh Wolf and that staff laying great groundwork for what would be year two. I mean, their approach play was great. Their buildup was great. You could see, even though they were losing games, to me, you could see that there were things moving in the right direction, right? Everybody was focused on the results. It's a poor team. Last year, we saw what an interesting and exciting team that was if we follow the Western Conference, and clearly has one of the top 3 players in the league, in my mind, Sebastian Driussi. They just inked him to a new deal. Look, he's going to get targeted this year, but I think he's one of the most unique players in the league, simply because when he's in differing thirds of the field, I mean, if he's in your defensive third, he's acting like a defender. If he's in the middle third of the field, he can do everything from open the game up with his range of passing to beating guys off the dribble, combining with people. But he's just an incredibly intelligent soccer player as well. You need people that make good decisions out there. And he was durable, and he played a lot. And then when he gets into the attacking third, he looks like a center forward. I mean, he can attack crosses, and you're just going, God, this guy looks completely like a number 9, right? So I find him a fascinating player, very focused, very intense, focused when he plays the game. But I think he's going to get targeted, and I think his workload is going to have to be very much monitored by Josh Wolf and company, because he is the fulcrum of the team. And if he goes down injured, they're going to be a different team. I'm sorry. There's no question. I mean, you can absorb it because you got a good team and a good roster, but without him, you're a very different team. So that to me seems one of the things. They just signed Will Bruin up front, so it's almost like by committee at the striker position. Jossie Zardes, I guess, is going to be the number one. Then you have a Rudy and Will Bruin, three guys. I mean, I think they're system guys right there that can play in the Wolf system. And then, of course, the other real key to me will be they lost Ruben Gabrielson. I kind of called him Austin FC's Virgil van Dijk, pre-Virgil van Dijk injury, by the way, because Virgil doesn't look like the same guy to me anymore. I don't know what you guys think.
Right there with you.
And he's also got a midfield in front of him that's not performing like it once did. But so they've got Leo Vasanen, a Finnish kid, who's 25. He's got big shoes to fill because I think Gabrielson was a wonderful compliment for Cascante. And so I think Austin FC is going to be entertaining, exciting, but, with other competitions now, a very different year for them.
All right. You mentioned the show in Austin, so go ahead and plug everything, what is going on in the world of Glenn Davis as we get ready for
me, I'm a show for plugging stuff, but you know what? In this modern day, I mean, right? I mean, if we're not out there promoting our shows, I mean, I've never been the biggest social media guy. I do it like begrudgingly.
Right there with you.
Yeah. So it's a mixed thing for me. I get told all the time that I don't do enough of it and I need to do more videos and selfies. And I know that's kind of strange coming from a guy who's on TV, but has been for 27 years. But, the radio shows, and what I will say to you guys is there's a lot of people around the country that do their own podcasts and radio shows. I buy my airtime here in Houston. So that means I'm on the hook for going out and making sure I find sponsorship. And I'm probably I'm a good salesman of soccer, but I'm not a good salesman of bringing in. You have that pressure then in those other things you have to do, which I enjoy though because it makes me stretch. It's the pressure's on me. I gotta get it done. And there are nights I walk away and I go, that's a pretty good radio show. And there are other nights I'm going, not good enough. But I think that's the beauty of having the pressure on yourselves. And you guys know you got to get guests. There's a lot of behind the scenes things that you guys are doing all the time. So the Houston radio show is on ESPN 97.5, and the show in Austin is on a network, the hornfm.com. And that's pretty much it.
At Glenn Davis, SOC on the Twitters. Glenn, I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. I am going to add you to our golden ticket status, where if at any moment in time during the day when you are sitting there with your cup of coffee and you want to vent your spleen, you can go ahead and duck in here and vent your spleen. It can be a hit and run. You can hang out for however long you want. Just go ahead and say, look, Nelly, I got to get something off my chest. I'm coming in. And so literally you can land the plane, drop the helicopter right on, and you can come on. You golden ticket status, Glenn Davis, as of right this very moment. Thanks for coming on with us for the preview.
You know what? I'm not big at grabbing awards. I'll take it, guys. I love it. And same for you on my shows. And we do need to bring you guys in for some Eastern Conference talk now that we have a little bit more of crossover. But I do have a punching bag in the garage. So, I do release the stress sometimes.
There you go. Glenn Davis, one of the great ambassadors for the sport of soccer here in the United States. Thanks for hanging out with us for the preview here on Thursday. That's your Thursday Thoughts. We'll catch up with you soon, my friend.
Anytime, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Glenn Davis. That was fun. That's always fun to have Glenn Davis come in because we know what Glenn can bring to the table, and it was good to catch up with him to get the preview of Houston. He mentioned Franco Escobar, which I was waiting to see what the response would be there. And, once again, you've got new ownership in Ted Siegel. You've got Ben Olsen as a head coach. And like I said, the jury of 13 has them 10th or lower. I mean, there are some 13s and some 14s in there right now from the jury of 13 at MLSsoccer.com.
And to his point, I mean, it feels like a place that should be sold out. I don't know how many times we've talked about, man, Houston feels like a sleeping giant. Of course it does.
I know. And the thing is that we seem to have that conversation every year with Glenn about being a sleeping giant, and they're still sleeping. And you want them to be that sleeping giant because we've seen the international matches. We've seen the international matches at whoever sponsors the Texans stadium now. Well, I'll say Reliant.
Is it Reliant still?
I'll put Reliant there. But whomever is the sponsor for the Texans stadium, when they have those international matches, that place is humming. But at BBVA, it's friends and family. And it shows. And it seems like Glenn has been fighting this battle every single year when we try to talk to him at the beginning of the season about these kinds of things. And Houston, I mean, if we thank you, Ricky. It's NRG. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well,
and Ropes, we have no visa updates as of yet, considering what Garth Lagerwey told us last night, that it's a 30% chance that the 3 players that are currently being looked at for coming to be a part of Atlanta United, 30%. So that's where we are right now with 0% chance I'll see any other games unless it's on at tailgate.
Well, then turn it on at the tailgate.
Yes, there you go. Turn it on at the tailgate.
Michael, I believe Abraham is good.
Yeah, I think since Abram played, I think he's good. And so we're waiting on and Derek Etienne did have a cup of coffee in the St. Louis City SC match. And
Giacomakis is one that's still outstanding.
That's the one that we're waiting for. Giacomakis. And so Gigi, Tank, YY, Giacomakis, however you want to phrase it. That's the one that we're waiting on right now. So
Yago, I swear to God, if y'all don't make a Animaniacs tifo this year, I swear to God, I will come down there and have strong words with somebody that lead to absolutely nothing, except maybe a hug.
Oh wow! And I mean that's the fun part in all of this. So we're waiting on that. Obviously tomorrow, Nyako as well. You've got looking forward to Austin and St. Louis, Ricky, Bam, El Tráfico, and the Rose Bowl. That one's going to be fun to start things off. That one's going to be a fun match to discuss tomorrow. Remember, 10 o'clock hour, weekend whip around, and in the weekend whip around, we go through all of the matches, we go through all of the facts, all the fun facts. And we let you know what we think, and traditionally what I think is wrong. And Jarrett and everybody else that dives in on the weekend whip around is far better at picking out those games than me. So that's where we are. So tomorrow, once again, 9 o'clock, half hours normal. Our friends from Beyond Goals hop in at 9:30. Weekend whip around starts at 10, and we fly from there. So it's it'll be fun to have weekend whip around where we can talk about all of these matches and everything going on. And when it comes to matchups, Ricky Ricardo definitely meh about Orlando and Red Bulls because reasons. Fantasy segment, that's something we've got to look into. Yeah, I mean, probably as a part of the weekend whip around, it might be kind of a hybrid. It might be a hybrid where we talk fantasy. And by the way, if you have not gotten the email from Jason Wright and the Jason Wright Agency about diving in, tell your friends, share the link, get into the league, and we will all continue to fight our way through and see if Chris Ashley can go another season of going undefeated when it comes to the fantasy. So the fantasy stuff, Ropes, might be kind of folded into weekend whip around. So I'm thinking that might be – I've already got my fantasy team all laid out. And once again, I mean, I'm usually in the promotion relegation league, I'm in the mid-table. So it's, kind of in there. So we'll see what happens. But I think probably – there we go, Ropes. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that on the Twitch pitch. So we'll see what's going on there. And, so it's all good with fantasy. So make sure that you're diving in there. And Ropes, once again, thanks for sharing the link to the league. Since it is the top of the hour, I think I can squeeze this in. So we'll see what happens here. We'll set the music down to, what do we say, 12? All right, so the music's at 12. Take it off loop, and we will read the promo for our sponsor by hitting rock. All right. For odor-free, clean, fresh air, one place you need to go, it's a Lemonize service. Lemonize deodorizes enclosed spaces like houses, apartments, and condos. Created a customized solution that eliminizes organic odors, including those like pet, cigarettes, and food. Realtors and property managers use the Lemonize service. The Lemonize bad odors help the seller rent their homes that much faster. Lemonize service offers a turnkey process, makes it easy to work with said realtors and property managers inside the environment, offering a very green way of going about things without any kind of odors or toxic residue whatsoever. They like green. Different than Febreze or other masking agents that you have either under the sink or above you in the cupboard, because when you reach under the sink or above you in the cupboard, you get that masking agent, you spray it in the air. It's the reason they call it a masking agent, because you're just masking the odor. You're not attacking the problem all the way down to the molecule, like our friends at Lemonize do with their proven scientific formula. Pricing very, very easy. One of two ways, either by the cubic foot or parts per million to come up with a price that's affordable for you, offering results in 24 hours or less. What you do is you go to the website. This is where I grab my pen. Go to lemonize.com to do us a favor. QR code for those of you watching on Twitch over my left shoulder. Website, ELIMINIZ.com, lemonize.com. Do us a favor after the .com. Go /Atlanta for those of you who are there, so you can sit there and tell them what part of the world that you are in, so they can help you out. So your full homework assignment, ELIMINIZE.com /Atlanta, lemonize.com /Atlanta for odor-free, clean, fresh air. Lemonize service proud sponsor for everything SDH on a Thursday. Man, you hit the 12 button and you try to move things down and it just jumps on you. So I don't know what's going on with this. I legitimately don't know. We said that 12 was the volume that was acceptable. Yeah, and so and that's the thing, Ricky, is instead of 11, I had it at 12, and sure enough, when I had it at 12, it sounded loud. I don't get it. You haven't heard the music since it was discussed last week. So that was the first. So I guess what we have to do is sit here and put it at 11. If there was an 11 and a half, that might be the way to go about it. So that's the music right now. So we're going to put the music at 11 because 12 did sound loud in my ear. Yeah. Once I took the music off, you could hear me because I knocked the music out. So I think here's the solution. I blame the Raccoons too, Kefsey. I really do. Yeah, and to your point, I think we are going to have to sit there and look at Ben Olsen and see if the Raccoons make their way from D.C. to Houston, and then Glenn Davis can have something else to talk about. And so yeah, that's where we are with all of that. So we're just going to have to put the music at 11, and if you hear it, you hear it, and if you don't, you don't, because 12 seems to be too loud. I feel like I'm Goldilocks here. Music is entirely too loud at 12 because all you hear is muffledness. And 11, you may not hear the music at all. 11 and a half seems to be where it needs to be perfect, but apparently not. So that's where we are. Bottom of the hour, we're going to have Jon Arnold come on, and Jon Arnold is now, the announcement was made yesterday that he's going to be a part of the new FC Dallas broadcast crew for this season. That's going to be fun. We'll catch up with him about that, how that came to be, talk about Dallas, talk about the West from his perspective, talk a little CONCACAF, talk a little MLS to finish up the show this morning. We are still efforting our very special guest here in the 10 o'clock half hour, and literally it would be just to kind of have this individual drop by, just to kind of drop by and say hi, just as this individual gets ready for his particular geography and their particular and the club that is in his geographic footprint. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, we are efforting our special guest from the Golden Ticket platform, and we will rock and roll from there. Let's go ahead and get into gossip, rumor, and innuendo here in the 10:30 half hour, in the 10 o'clock half hour, and anything on your mind as we go here as we wait for Jon Arnold at 10:30. Barcelona's Xavi says he's in constant contact with Lionel Messi. Deal at PSG runs out in the summer. and he would be welcomed back home to the Spanish club if he wanted to return. That's from our friends at Goal. Chelsea will sell Mason Mount in the summer when he has a year left on his deal. If they fail to agree to a new deal with the 24-year-old, that's so they can get something in return. And so they're not left with open hand. Arsenal set to battle Borussia Dortmund, Newcastle, and Juve for the signature of Real Valladolid's Ivan Fresneda. Arsenal started contract extension talks with Granit Xhaka, who wants to remain at the Emirates. Liverpool interested in Josko Vardiol. I would imagine everybody after yesterday is interested in Josko Vardiol after he scored the goal that drew the first leg with Manchester City. Joao Cancelo says his loan move to Bayern Munich was an opportunity he couldn't refuse after believing he should play more at Manchester City, while Pep Guardiola disagreed. Manchester United's Luke Shaw, Diogo Dalot have done enough to secure new deals with the Old Trafford club, but a number of other players at the club face being sold in the summer. That's from our friends at Football Transfers. Agent of Marcel Sabitzer has hinted that the 28-year-old could remain at Manchester United beyond the end of the season following his loan move from Bayern Munich. Napoli president Aurelio De Laurentiis has given Manchester United hope of signing Victor Osimhen after saying, "Sometimes there are offers you can't refuse." Very godfather of Aurelio De Laurentiis. Leicester City, Knicks, could look to sign Borussia Dortmund's midfielder Mahmoud Daoud free this summer. Former England keeper Ben Foster says he doesn't regret turning down the chance to come out of retirement to sign for Newcastle. His first-choice keeper, Nick Pope, is banned for the Gummy Bear Cup final this weekend. Remember that Martin Dubravka is also cup-tied, and he isn't going to be able to do it. So it looks like it's going to be Loris Karius who is going to be the keeper for Newcastle this weekend. Speaking of Newcastle, Ryan Fraser's in training with the club's under-21s and is expected to leave the club in the summer. That is courtesy of our friends at the four-letter newspaper. So take that information at your own peril. We've got a lot of other games today. And Crépeau is out with a red. Yes, Crépeau is out with a red. And so El Tráfico is going to be an interesting one on the board here in Major League Soccer. It's going to be a fun one. So we've got obviously, we have the action going on right now. Middle East, North Africa, lower divisions going on. Super Leagues, friendlies. Europa Conference League kicks off at 12:45. Lazio's a favorite on the road at Cluj. Anderlecht's a favorite at home against Ludogorets. Dnipro out of Ukraine is a favorite against Larnaca at a +112. Partizan Belgrade is a -111 favorite at home against our friends from Sheriff Tiraspol. Europa League. Monaco's a favorite at home at a +122. Bayer Leverkusen is a +216 underdog. PSV is a +100 as they're at home taking on Sevilla. Juve -125 on the road at Nantes. Midtjylland is a big dog as Sporting heads there at a -114. Midtjylland is a +335. Also, Conference League at 3 o'clock. Ghent, a favorite at home at a -111 against Karabag. Fiorentina -156 at home against Braga. Basel's a favorite at +129 against Trabzonspor. And Lech Poznan is a +146 against Bodo Glimt. Europa League, Manchester United, Barcelona, leg number 2 at 3 o'clock. Man U's a +121. Barcelona's a +239. Union Berlin at 3 o'clock, favorite against Ajax at a +131. Rennes, a favorite at home against Shakhtar Donetsk at a -149. Roma and Salzburg. Roma's a favorite at home at a -143. Liga MX Femenil is at 445. Club America, huge favorite, obviously, against Atlético San Luis. Other Copas and competitions going on. Our friends at Always Ready are on at 5 o'clock in the Copa Libertadores at a +325 against Magallanes from Chile. Also on the board, it is Copa Libertadores Universidad Católica and Millonarios. That's at 7 o'clock tonight. Católica is a +146. Fortaleza, +100 on the road at Maldonado of Uruguay. Also on the board, a couple of other games. Liga MX has a match at 9:05 tonight. Santos Laguna at a +104 against Toluca, and Toluca is a +221. So tomorrow, once again, with Weekend Whip Around, we'll go over juice boxes and previews, who's in, who's out, all those kinds of things with every kind of activity that is going on there. On TV, we'll show you what's going on there today. Obviously, when it comes to the Europa League, Europa Conference League, you're going to have Golasso Show on CBS Sports Network. Going to be a very busy day for them. Paramount Plus is going to be very, very busy. Big CBS is going to be very, very busy. So here's what you're looking at here. Copa Libertadores is on BN and BN en Español. They have the Always Ready match at 5, Universidad Católica at 7. Santos Laguna Toluca is on ESPN Deportes. That's at 9 o'clock. TUDN has Europa League, Nantes, Juve, and Manchester United, Barcelona. Unimas has the same in a simulcast. ESPN Plus has simulcast of Liga MX. All 8 Conference League games, all 8 Europa League games are on Paramount Plus. So take your pick. VIX has both 2 Europa League games, PSV Sevilla, Union Berlin, and Ajax. VIX Plus has your simulcast of Europa Conference League and 7 of the 8 Europa League games that are available there as well. So that's your stuff on TV. That's your juice boxes heading in. So that's what you're staring at today. So it's going to be a fun day as we're rolling through everything here when it comes to the sport that we talk about every single day. We can't do it without you guys. Remember She Believes last night? It was 2-1. It was 2-0. And this Mallory Swanson person, once again, who's substituted in for Mallory Pugh, absolutely just continues to crush it when it comes to what we're seeing from the women's national team. And so Mallory Swanson again, and it was strong from them, but it's 2-0. But then Brazil scores late to make it 2-1. And the U.S. has to hang on, frankly. And so it was 2-1, but the U.S. gets She Believes. She gets She Believes, and it's very, very cool. Obviously, CONCACAF, Mexico, Canada, Panama join the U.S. in the 2023 U17s World Cup. Peter Vermes gets a contract extension for 5 years. There was a discussion that Vermes was going to be in part of the talks for the men's national team. But that is apparently now not going to be the case. And no doubt about it, Kefsey, Mallory Swanson, the undeniable MVP of She Believes. That is the honest to goodness truth. You've got 15th season, his 15th season as manager. Peter Vermes given a 5-year contract extension through the 2028 MLS season. Longest tenured coach in MLS history. 4 major titles. MLS Cup in 2013, Open Cups 2012, 2015, 2017, 10 playoff appearances, 4th most by a head coach in MLS history. League's 4th winningest manager, 183 regular season wins, 3rd among active head coaches, behind only Bruce Arena and Bob Bradley. Mike Illig, co-owner of Sporting Kansas City, had a quote, "Superlative strategic thinker who loves to win and hates to lose. Continuously demonstrates his commitment to the ownership's objective to elevate Sporting Kansas City as a perennial contender in a league that grows tougher and tougher every year." Remember last year, the horrendous start that Sporting Kansas City had. Then they brought in the transfers in the summer transfer window, turned things around, finished 11, 16, and 7. But remember the start that they had. The start was awful. And a lot of us were throwing dirt on Peter Vermes. I was one of them. It's like, does he deserve to finish the season? Yes, he had that kind of capital. If things were continuing the way that they were early on in the year, then Peter Vermes, everyone was wondering. We're kicking dirt on him. Has the league passed him by? What's going on at Sporting Kansas City? Does he need to go? We all were doing that. Don't fib. 11, 16, and 7, they finished 12th. Yes, it was their lowest finish in the history of the club, but considering where they were to get to 12th in the West, that was some yeoman's work by Peter Vermes, and I'll be the first person to admit it. So Peter Vermes, another 5 years with Sporting Kansas City. Speaking of clubs, yesterday, we mentioned Don Garber, 28th season, 29 teams, with St. Louis City SC coming to the fore. Garber expects the 30th team to be announced this year. I think they were looking for the end of the year. He doesn't rule out further expansion. 4 time zones, multiple climate zones. We do need more teams. The words from Don Garber, we do need more teams. 30th team will come at some point soon. Hopefully, we'd like to get that announced by the end of the year. I never thought we'd be at 28. I never thought we'd be at 29. We'd say we're going to stop at 30, but the other major leagues are larger than that. Yes, 32, and I think that's going to be your target number. I think 32 should be where you stop unless you get into that discussion that we were getting into about the gong, and I don't have the gong with me, discussing promotion and relegation. Mike Conti has talked about it before, where you go past 32, you got to think about 40, you got to think about MLS 1 and 2, where they're their own self-contained organism, 20 up, 20 down, and then we get into the street fight like we were talking about yesterday, the owners that under no circumstance want to be a part of any kind of promotion relegation because of the money that they invest. But Don Garber, I think they stop at 32. I think that's where they stop. San Diego's in the mix with what you're seeing at Snapdragon. Do they put more people in there? Because that's a 30,000 seater, and that's what I think you need these days. I think you need 30,000. I think Austin sold themselves into a bit of a short position. I think they did. And so low 20s right now in Austin. So we'll see what happens. Don Garber says we need more teams. But it's going to have to be somebody that, if they want to build their own stadium, like Bill Foley said when he was thinking about a team in Vegas before he bought Bournemouth for 20% of the price, it's going to cost $800 million by the time you're done. Stadium plus expansion fee. That's what he was looking at. So you're looking at Vegas, you're looking at San Diego, you're looking at Detroit, you're looking at all these other cities. I know folks are talking about Sacramento. And bam, with the interesting question, you put 2 in the West, who in the East comes in? Well, remember, you could probably slide somebody. Phoenix is definitely one. That's a part of the discussion, too, as a top 20 market. But once again, you're going to have to do something that's probably domed because of the weather. You're probably going to have to do something that is domed because playing in the summer in Phoenix in 108-degree weather, I think that's suboptimal. And, Ricky, that was the point I was going to get into. Somebody could be the Milwaukee Brewers in this discussion. Somebody moves from east to west. Somebody moves from west to east. So, and that's it. Coco, you could slide Minnesota, Sporting, or St. Louis. You could slide them over. So, you're looking at 32, but you're going to take, if something is geographically dominant, you're going to end up taking one of those teams down the middle of the footprint. Minnesota, Sporting, St. Louis. They'll get moved one place or the other. But, I think 32 is going to be the number. Yeah, and Tofka, I know that you and Bart were getting into this discussion about scheduling. 16-team non-conference, divisions, non-conference, and divisional play. Yeah, I know that you, like I said, I know that you and Bart were getting into the discussion about how the schedule could look, and you get it as close to 36 or 38 as possible. And I know that you and Bart, as our schedule makers here on the network, we're getting into that kind of idea of, okay, here's what's going on. So, that's what you're staring at. That's the deal. So that's what you're looking at. And, so we'll see what happens. But 32 long term, I think that your scheduling is going to be in that neighborhood of 36 to 38 games because of Open Cup. You don't want to make it any more than that because of Leagues Cup, because of Open Cup, because of playoffs, because my guess is on your tombstone, Hybrid Pro Roll would have worked. I just legitimately think that I think the playoffs get expanded again. I think you get your 2 legs for the semifinals and the finals. I just think that they didn't want to dump it on MLS all at once, where you're adding first-round games to a best-of-3. You would go 2 legs for the semifinals and the finals. I mean, so you're adding, another 5 games to the schedule. I think that they wanted to do this first round first, get it out of the way. Here's our idea. Then hopefully, and I'm hoping against hope that you end up with the 2 legs in the semis and the finals, and then you have your final. And if it's a 1, that's fine. Although I'd love to see I'd love to see a 2-leg final, but I'm a fan of 2 legs. Always have been. Bam. 32 to 38 teams goes conference, 40 1-year conference, top 10, top bottom split in MLS 1 and MLS 2. And that's and whatever you do, you're going to have owners who are beyond angry when they end up being a part of MLS 2 because they didn't invest enough. And it's going to if you go down this road, and we'll go down this road because we can. You go down this road and it ends up with the notion of owners who didn't invest realizing entirely too soon that they should have invested and did not. And you end up with what happened. You end up with a team with a rich owner that gets relegated into MLS 2 because he didn't invest enough, and they get exposed. But I will also guarantee you that you end up with owners who are forced to invest. They kind of get called onto the carpet. It's like you're sitting at the poker table and the guy across from you who's got the bigger stack of chips goes, check. You know you've got the better hand, or at least you think you do. So do you check or do you raise? You check or raise, and that's what you're doing. But you also are going to have individuals who will see what's going on in Major League Soccer, and then they will invest. That you're going to have folks who are going to be looking at the outside going, hey, I like that as an investment. I think I want to dive in. And so I think that's what you're going to end up with. You're going to have owners, if it gets to this point. And I still think today, when you get to 32, you're going to have owners that are going to be exposed for investment or lack of investment. I think that you're going to end up with folks who invest, folks who are forced to invest, and folks who need to invest. And if they realize that they can't invest, you're going to have a line of folks that are going to want to buy a team, that are not going to want to buy an expansion franchise, but they will buy by spending $200 and $250 million less getting an established franchise. You will see that in the 32-team Major League Soccer. Coco and Bam. Coco, how long until Apple demands Pro-Rel? They are running the TV show, Coco, the TV product. I think, like I said, look at it in its current form. Look at all of the opportunities for TV inventory. That's why you have the Whip Around show. That's why you have the preview show. That's why they have the monopoly on most of the games of the week that you see, where you have the FS1 Fox game. You've got the Fox Deportes game. You have the TSN game, and that's only like one a week. That you've got the linear deal in addition to the Apple deal. Right, Bam, that is absolutely true. That is why they are showing MLS Next Pro. All of the MLS properties they want to try to put their hands on, and that way they can sit there and have all of this inventory, as we talked about with Glenn Davis. Well, and that may be true too, Tafka. In 10 years, it may be Apple pushing the initiative. Apple says, do it or we walk. It just depends. Yeah, and Open Cup probably, think of any they got Leagues Cup, they've got Next Pro, they've got regular season. Open Cup might be that next element that they add when that comes around the corner. So, yeah, and Coco, yeah, Apple seems to be running more than just the TV show at this point. And that's where the new contract, Bam, just started for the Premier League. So I think it's another 7 years after this. NBC hung on to the Premier League. They definitely overpaid for it to keep it, but it's going to be another 7 years. It's going to be a while before the Premier League is up and running. So Apple could do something preemptive, almost like a transfer, where if you negotiate a year ahead of time in that window, then you could have both MLS and the Premier League. You sit there and you have MLS as your test balloon, and then sit there and look at the Premier League when the end of that deal comes up, and you're like, okay, we'll re-up with Major League Soccer, and then we'll also add the Premier League. Because what you've done there is you've given yourself a program in the morning, you've given yourself a program in the afternoon, as we've seen with NBC here in the States. 7:30, 10, 12:45. 7:30 in the morning, 10 o'clock, that's your big window, 12:45. So that's what you're staring at. Does Apple at the end, toward the end of the Premier League deal, want to just make themselves kind of like what Paramount Plus is doing and just buying up soccer properties and having them for everybody? You know, when we're in year 13 of the network and we have this discussion, mark this day in this conversation. Apple keeps an eye on the Premier League, bids head-to-head with NBC to try to get the Premier League. So basically, their weekends are locked-in programming for soccer. If you are a destination person, it's Paramount Plus if you're interested in those leagues. But if you're interested in the domestic product in the Premier League, it could be Apple on a Saturday morning, starting you at 7:30. And then with your MLS product, starting with the 4 o'clock game in the afternoon on your linear partner, you got your 7:30s, your 10s, and your post-game show. So basically what Apple could do in 6 years' time, you could have Apple TV Plus, if they picked up the Premier League. They could be going soccer from 7 o'clock in the morning, East Coast time, till 1:30 in the morning. They would be creating 18 and a half hours of consistent soccer programming a day with the Premier League and the domestic league, Major League Soccer. They could be doing that. And yeah, and Rich, I firmly believe that MLS on Apple is a test for other rights. Yeah, and so MLS, once they got the EPL rights, they dropped Major League Soccer. So that's something else to keep an eye on too. But I think that once you see what they've invested, this is where, yeah, and Wiley, that's the thing. Everyone would be married to Apple TV Plus. They would be absolutely married to Apple TV Plus on a weekend. You literally would be going from one element to the next. It's just like, all right, I'm gonna be camped out on Apple TV Plus. I got my 7:30 game, got my 5 at 10 o'clock. I've got my Goal Rush channel, which is what I watch. Because I can't watch 5 matches at a time, so I watch Goal Rush. That's what I do. I'll watch Red Zone. I watch the Red Zone channel for NFL coverage. That's how I consume the product. I will probably watch the Whip Around show on Apple TV Plus more than anything because I want to see highlight, game. That's what I'm looking for. But Apple TV Plus could create an environment in 8 years where you could be starting at 7:30 in the morning, going to 1:30 in the morning. Premier League product, domestic product. Yeah, and Ricky, yeah. MLB really was the test. Pac-12's in a world of hurt, by the way. You think the Pac-12 is going to go that route? They are in a world of hurt. They're going to get picked up for pennies on the dollar. Whomever they go with, it's going to be probably going to be something along the lines of a shared ad revenue deal. I don't know if they're going to get. They might get the same kind of money up front. It won't be any kind of an increase. But it will be very, very interesting to see what happens with the Pac-12. I'm not anticipating any kind of a financial windfall for the conference when it comes to whomever their partner is. Yeah, I know, Rich, I know a lot of folks would be but you've got that staggered time. So the contracts, I don't think, end simultaneously. So Apple would have to figure out what to do with Major League Soccer, and then they would have to figure out what to do with the Premier League. It is the bottom of the hour. So we welcome in the newest member of the FC Dallas broadcast team, Jon Arnold. Congratulations, my friend. Thanks for coming on the show this morning. I imagine that the caffeine or the early cup of coffee might be tasting a little better this morning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready for this season. I think, I know you guys have been talking about TV rights and the new deal, and obviously there's some parts that we're still working out, some voices we want to hear that we might not be hearing, but I think it's just going to make MLS so accessible. And part of that is getting the local radio voice on the home broadcast, which I am excited to be part of with Owen and Steve and the crew over at FCD. And I just think there's going to be so many options at fans' fingertips once this thing really gets rolling. And there's so many great stories this year when we actually look at what's happening on the field that I really am geared up for this MLS season. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, John.
So let's go back and since I'm the naturally curious individual that I am, how did this stuff go down with FC Dallas? How did you become a member of this crew? And like I said, it's going to be a fun listen for you, but how did this happen?
They called me and asked me if I would be interested, and I said yes. It was that simple. I've written about the team for 9 years in some capacity, typically as kind of the day-to-day beat writer for the market. Had a deal with the Dallas Morning News to do some work with them when I was still working full-time over at Goal, and the striker last year, which Sam Jones does a great job over there in Atlanta and still doing great work. But I just felt like it was time for me to try something else, and I didn't know it was going to be being a guy in the radio booth, but that's what it's turned out to be. I'm still doing writing, still covering the league for a couple different outlets, still have the newsletter rolling on. But yeah, it was as simple as I think the comms team, we know each other well from me bothering them for almost a decade now, and I guess they decided they wanted me to keep hassling them in the booth.
So looking at Dallas, because I know there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about with you this morning while I've got you. I want to talk about Dallas. I want to talk about the West. I want to talk about the league. I want to talk CONCACAF because there's some big news there as well. And full disclosure, as someone who is getting CONCACAF on a daily basis, I have invested and tell others that they should as well. All right, back to Dallas. With the exits that have happened with FC Dallas, Matt Hedges goes to Toronto to try to help them up with their Swiss cheese backline. Franco Jara's gone, but there also are some acquisitions for FC Dallas coming in that are intriguing. Who was added in the offseason that folks should be keeping an eye out for?
Well, they just made a move for Jesus Jimenez from Toronto, Spanish forward. I think, Nico Estevez is a Spanish manager. He's worked with all sorts of different nationalities as managers do, but I think he has a really good network back in Spain, and apparently likes what he heard. They needed forward depth. Franco Jara being bought out or mutually agreeing to leave the club was significant. He never developed into what FC Dallas wanted him to be. You had a designated player sitting on the bench, a good locker room guy, good leadership. But when you're paying a guy millions and millions of dollars to be a designated player and he's a forward, you need goals. You don't need necessarily positive locker room vibes. So, in some ways, the Hedges departure, Franco Jara's departure, I think are sort of the key offseason stories. But FC Dallas upgrading, bring a different Jesus, I believe, or Jesus as a right back. We've got Jesus Ferreira, a known quantity up top, and now Jesus Jimenez. So, yeah, the challenge in the booth will be keeping the Jesus and Jesus and Jesus straight. But I think it should be ultimately good for FC Dallas. I do wonder if there's one more move that they could make. I think, the questions will be, how does the back line play without Matt Hedges? Truly, we haven't seen for a decade what it looks like when he's not there. And he's been such a good and consistent contributor. And I think he was probably the best defender for FC Dallas last year. So that's a huge question, but I also think in central midfield, they haven't done anything to improve. And that's an area where, I really circle that. I wonder if before the April deadline, if they make a move, but I think it's a team that had a good season last year, really trusts in Nico Estevez's vision. And because of that trust, hasn't felt a need to go out and overhaul the team like a Toronto or some of the other clubs that, weren't where they wanted to be last season. So I think it's an intriguing club. And a team that, fans are expecting a lot from, but there's definitely still some question marks there.
Well, and one of the things that we've done with all of our guests and their particular bailiwicks is reference the jury of 13 over at MLSsoccer.com and their predictions, and they sit there and it's like, okay, here's what we think. And it seems to be, for the most part, fairly solid, Although there are some renegade, Russian judges that are looking at 7-8. You're looking at that 4-5, and there are a couple of 2s in there as well. As you size up FC Dallas, looking at the Western Conference, where do you feel their place is going into this season, all things being equal and everybody being 100%?
I actually think it's going to be tough to match the place in the standings they did last year. I think they might be as good or better as they were in 2022 as Nico Estevez continues to implement his idea. There's a lot of really interesting off-field stuff that he's wanting to implement, mentality, ways of thinking. He's a big fan of a couple different sports psychologists that are known in Spain that have worked at places like Athletic, which intentionally limits themselves to only players from the region, and means that you have to sort of find these performance enhancing ways outside of paying a bunch of money to bring in a new player. So I think the fruits of that labor are going to be seen. I just think that other teams in the West are really good. They were last year too. But I think that 4-5 is probably about where I see them falling. The analysts, Goss, I think, has them too. Look, if they do that, then it's great news, not only for FC Dallas, but also U.S. national team fans, because that means that Jesus Ferreira is doing it again. That means that he's either scoring more than 15 goals, got 18 last year, and he's banging them in, and he's helping link the attack, and he's getting help from Paul Arriola, another U.S. international, that Alan Velasco is flourishing, and that the defense is solid. I just feel like even if those things happen, I think the other teams in the West could surpass Dallas this year, but I think it'll still be a really good team. And the expectation for so long in North Texas, and the reason that the Hunts and the decision makers decided to move on from Luchi Gonzalez was the standard had been playoffs, good seed. This is still a franchise that's been in the league since 1996 and has never lifted MLS Cup. So the standard has always been playoffs and then an elimination, to be honest. So I think that's reasonable to expect again this year. I wonder if they'll have a little trouble getting to that upper echelon unless they make a move in midfield.
Random question for you this morning. We were about to have one of our golden ticket folks crash the party, and I have a random question for you, Jon Arnold. How are you about curling?
I've definitely stayed up to watch. When it's in the Olympics.
You might have stayed up to watch this guy, John Shuster. John Shuster, our resident Minnesota United supporter, is crashing the party. And literally, that's what golden ticket status does. So Jon Arnold, John from FC Dallas and everything getting CONCACAF. I introduce you, sir, to John Shuster, gold medal curling dude.
That's me, man.
Nice it's a pleasure. It's a little bit of a grudge moment because it's FCD Minnesota on opening weekend, but hopefully we can put the rivalry aside.
Well, 100%, man, 100%.
So, John, I know that Shuster, because there are 3 Johns here. My head's about to explode. So, Shuster, when you've been studying Minnesota United, getting ready for this matchup against FCD, what are you looking at for Minnesota United as they go up against Jon Arnold and FC Dallas coming up this weekend?
Well, I mean, we're going to have to make some adjustments, obviously, with the Reynoso kind of debacle we have going on right now. But yeah, I think the rest of the team look pretty strong. But we got a few more goals we got to put in the net this season, and this week will be a good look at it. I know exhibition season hasn't exactly been great for us.
Jon Arnold, do you have a question, curling or otherwise, for John Shuster?
You know what? I'm always I've been one time to Minnesota. I'm always fascinated at the sort of fabric of the fan base because I feel like it does a good job of mimicking what the actual community seems to look like. You have, different cultures, different types of people that like different things. How did you get into loonness and what is it, how do you feel like the club reflects the community?
I think the Minnesota soccer scene, we're fairly new, obviously, as far as as a whole, whereas I'm really, really new to the soccer scene. Is 2019 was kind of my, trial by fire. We started hosting players for the Duluth FC, our MPSL team in town here, which I'm now part owner of. But going to a game last year, I was lucky enough to do the coin toss, and we were playing against Austin in August, and seeing exactly what that is, and that is Minnesotans have this way of being a tight knit community, and we see that in curling clubs where you have everything from doctors to tradespeople all hanging out together, kind of in harmony at one table. And I think that's kind of what we see, at the Minnesota United games. It's funny. I live 2 hours north of Minneapolis, St. Paul, where where the Loons play, and I know a ton of people I went to college with, people I grew up with that live in the cities. And I feel like everybody I know has season tickets to that thing, no matter where I know them from. So we definitely support our sports teams, and in that community in the cities at games is just, it's a magical place. When I went to one game last year, my first game that I was able to attend, I definitely will be to more because of that.
Shusty, can you compare the two sports in any way when it comes to whether what you're watching and what you're seeing to what you're able to do on an international scale?
I mean, you can always compare sports, but I think one thing that, curling and soccer have in common is the tactical nature of it, right? For me, I've made my career through tactical decisions and the choices and shots we're playing, and that kind of thing. And soccer's so much, adjusting and getting to know the game a lot more in these last 4 years. The tactics that kind of go into, making a soccer team succeed are the kind of the similar to curling.
Jon Arnold, once again, anything else for Shusty before we let him get back to bed?
You mentioned the things they have in common, and I appreciate you going high level and saying, tactics and thinking. You guys also drink a lot of beer, is that right?
At the club level that happens, but that's maybe the same, like men's league soccer. Afterwards, sitting in the parking lot, I imagine there's some beers consumed, just like club level curling. But at the top level, and I know from experience of hosting guys who are trying to make MLS. We had one of our guys live in our house that had a tryout for fighting KC while he was living with us, and I can honestly say at the top level of soccer, the top level of curling, the amount of drinking goes way down.
Sure. I haven't reached that, so I'm still doing the post kick around cans. That's the only part I'm good at, but I can appreciate you have to sort of change based on your level.
Well,
very true.
Shusty, as always, it's great to have you parachuting in, talking about Duluth FC, getting ready for your season in the NPSL. I know you just came back from a tournament. I think Jared Allen was also in the tournament from the NFL, if I remember correctly. He was part of one of the other groups trying to chase after wins. Is that right?
Yeah. They took us down in the very first game of the round robin at the national championships in Denver. So that made national headlines. The fake headlines was that it was a team full of NFL players, which was not the truth. He plays with two Olympians, one which is a former teammate of mine, another one who got a bronze medal with Switzerland back in 2018 when we won gold. And if you're ever going to get somebody, it's kind of like any sport. The first game is the time when you could get somebody, and they clipped us in the first game and made national headlines. But what didn't make national headlines at the end is that we came out and won a national championship, and they didn't make the playoffs. So,
yep, absolutely. So, what's next for you before we let you go?
I'm heading to Kalamazoo, Michigan next week for the mixed doubles national championships. Try to win one of those again. I won one back in 2019, and our team also, our men's team, by winning the national championships, have the world championships coming up the first week of April 1st to 9th up in Ottawa, Canada.
There you go. John Shuster, Shusty 2010. Thanks for hanging out with us on Twitter. Golden ticket status activated. That's what this means here with me and Jon Arnold. Good to see you, my friend. Be safe. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks, gentlemen. Enjoy the opening weekend.
All right. Wow. Shusty crashing the party.
It's not often that you get the Olympic drop in, man. I mean, maybe on your show, John, but not on stuff I'm on.
Well, all right. So I will go ahead before we get back into the soccer discussion that we were having. As I gave Glenn Davis this morning, I'm also going to give you golden ticket status. So like John Shuster, if there is any moment where you need to vent your spleen, seriously, if there's something wrong and you have to get something off of your chest, literally crash at any time. We will do what we just did with Shusty, and we will talk about whatever's on your mind. So any day of the week you want to crash, the time frame is there. You can come on in. Golden ticket status will be activated with Jon Arnold, Arnold, John on Twitter. Shusty got me off topic, and that's a rare one. The rest of the West, when you look at the rest of the Western Conference, is it chalkish for you? Is it LAFC, John Thorrington going right up against the edge of the salary cap, being imaginative and continuing to do so? Austin, Dallas at the 3-4. What are you looking at in the West?
Yeah, I think LAFC looks really good. I think the Galaxy are going to be good, which I guess is a bit of a hot take. I just think, there's like a lot of weird things maybe happening. But I think Ricky Puig is really, really good. And I think he has players that he can work with that score goals, and that often wins soccer matches.
Just don't give it to Douglas Costa. That's the only thing I can say.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, you should. I'm sort of ready, or maybe just hoping, because he seems like a good guy and he's been so fun to watch. I think Efrain Alvarez could have a big breakout year if he's been doing what he's supposed to do and needs to do. In the offseason, I think the Sounders bounce back. We haven't really, from the kind of the MLS ecosystem. I think Portland is kind of getting overlooked, which is dangerous because they made a huge signing and are a solid team every year. RSL is decent. I just think when you get down, you start to list the teams, maybe cliche, but I'm not sure there's many easy weekends. I know the East is tough. I think the West also is going to be difficult. And, I do think I'm saying FC Dallas maybe drop a rung or two from last year. I wouldn't be surprised if Austin drops a rung or two from last year, just because they're extending themselves now with CCL. How teams take on Leagues Cup will be interesting. There's a break during the season, so in theory, it shouldn't sort of torpedo what you're doing. But, if a guy gets injured playing Pumas or Necaxa or whoever, or, if a team really focuses and plays many more games than they're expecting to, that could be a factor. I just, and look, I know teams in the East will take it seriously, some of them, but I think in the West, you look at the markets and it's if you're Houston, you should take Leagues Cup seriously. Obviously, you're not going to win a trophy in any other competition. Your fans want to see Tigres, they want to see America, they want to see Rayados. Take that seriously. Dallas, Austin, LA, you have these markets that are so good for Mexican American, drawing in fans. And I think if those teams don't take Leagues Cup seriously, it's a missed opportunity for them. Maybe a coach or a player doesn't necessarily care what would sell tickets, but I just think Leagues Cup is going to be something that a lot of teams are taking seriously. All of these things to me sort of influence what the West is going to look like when we're getting ready for decision day and talking about the playoffs. And so I really see it, yes, a bit chalky, but I think some of the teams that maybe are getting overlooked right now, Galaxy, Timbers, RSL, even the Whitecaps, could jump up and make things difficult for clubs that were in that echelon in 2022.
How jacked are you about having Leagues Cup as a part of the MLS fabric now?
No, look, I mean, in a way, it is sort of a Jon Arnold special, where it's I've covered Mexico for a long, long, long time. I live down there. I still do a lot of work on it and cover MLS. And so I think it's going to be super fascinating. I am a bit of a purist in that I think the games that matter will still be CONCACAF Champions League. That's still the standard. That's still our measuring stick. But that only comes once a year. And even then, we don't necessarily get MLS versus Liga MX matchups. This will guarantee that. And I think it's easy to sort of turn your nose up at right now because it is weird and it's new and no one's ever really done this before as far as an intra-league tournament. But I do think that with time, I wrote a newsletter, I remember last year, and I said, you won't love Leagues Cup until you do. At first it might seem fake because it is, but so is the Premier League, so is the UEFA Champions League, so is the World Cup. We made those up, right? We can, World Cup was come up with after the South American tournament, 1930. It's hey, what if we just invited everybody and the format changes and the teams change and everything? I think in a way, yes, of course, we cherish these traditions. We want things to be legitimate. We want things to be the same. We want to compare eras. We want to say, is Jordan the best or is LeBron the best or is it actually Kareem? I get it. But I think with Leagues Cup, it's this is a forward-thinking thing that MLS is doing, saying, hey, we could sit here and just try and be like every other league. But if we're serious about being one of the top 5 leagues in the world, we need more contact. We need more push. We need more competition with Mexico, with Liga MX to get legitimacy. to get dollars to spend on big time players, to get interest, to get respect. And so I think, right now, I think it's going to feel weird. I think it's going to be a little forced. And I think in 5 to 10 years, everybody's just going to be like, yeah, Leagues Cup, let's go.
What did you think about the announcement with the new playoff format where it's getting very NBA-ish very, very quickly?
Yeah, I don't like that. I think that the league had finally found a format for the playoffs that worked, was exciting. And one thing that I think, I hear people often talk still about, how do we draw in the casual fan? And I've heard a lot of fears with the Apple deal where it's, you're kind of siloing yourself, right? You're not going to have the fan walking into the bar, happening to see the Sounders game and thinking, oh, that's interesting. There's still the Fox deal, but for the most part, it's all an Apple. I wonder if that's not really how fandom works these days. Even like with F1, you look at how people have gotten into it from the Netflix series, from storytelling, from these different sort of avenues that they meet you at. They meet you where you are. You're already watching Netflix. Now you're being served this thing. I think people are already watching Apple TV. Now they're going to be served MLS. I worry that the playoff format being sort of a smash up of, hey, this is what you're used to with the NBA, and hey, this is what the MLS fan is used to, where it's this single elimination, exciting reward for the regular season because you host the game. I'm skeptical that the fusion will work. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another format in 2-3 years. But look, like the owners get home games, the owners get more games, and obviously, like that's always going to be attractive when you can get that gate revenue, get the concession money, get the parking for 2, 3, 4 more games. They're going to want to do that. So I wouldn't have messed with it. I liked the playoff format. And I will say from Liga MX, they expanded the playoffs in the pandemic, saying they needed these games to get gate revenue, to help owners that were struggling during the lockdown moments, during the moments where they couldn't sell tickets, couldn't sell sponsorships, advertising payments were falling through. They expanded to 12 teams in an 18-team league. It was almost impossible to miss the playoffs, and the games are bad. And then the real playoffs started, 2 weeks after, 1 week after. It didn't work. They're backtracking on it. They're going to go back to the old format. I think MLS could have used that as a lesson now that they're doing more close collaboration with Liga MX. I'm surprised they didn't speak more with their colleagues in Mexico to find out what didn't work about that. Maybe they did. Maybe they think this is sort of the best of both worlds, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a reversion in a couple of years.
Well, and I would think that with your new TV partner, and I'll just for the simplicity of it, your new TV partner. I know it's a streaming service, and yeah, because I'm 700 years old, and I just think of things inside the box as TV. They're going to want inventory because they're looking at it as a TV series. So what they're doing is trying to find as many angles and opportunities to bring in revenue, whether it's the whip around show, the monopoly of not having any of the standalone games in that 7:30 or 10 o'clock window, having the show, the pre and the post, having all of the other elements that are there on Apple TV Plus. And to get more episodes for this TV series, you bring in Leagues Cup, you bring in MLS Next Pro, you bring in this expanded playoff. And I'm thinking, and like I said, I've said this now, mark the tape. What I think will happen, I'm a fan of 2 legs. I'm a 2-leg guy. I think that this initial announcement of the best of 3, 5 points, whatever, hopefully is a first step toward 2 legs, conference semifinal, conference final, and then whatever it is for the final for MLS Cup, if it's 1 or if it's 2 or whatever. I just think that you didn't want to dump all of this the week before the season because you had coaches publicly.
I mean, the Phil Neville thing, it's a joke that the Athletic reporters who did the story were banned from Inter Miami's media day. I hope they figure that out. It's silly. A coach said what he said on the record. That's how things work.
Yeah.
But he was right. Like, that's the thing. It's like he was right. Like, how do you not have the playoff? Like I think in Mexico, I see this all the time, where the information, the proper information is filtered. We all sort of accept it as true when certain reporters report it. It's a bad way to do business. It's a bad way to do things because you just have this situation where there's so many rumors and you're not sure what's true and what's not. I think MLS, has done a really good job with that. Look, I'm not saying I don't want scoops. I don't want reporters doing their jobs. Of course I do. I just think like like it could have, this is clearly something that had been in discussion since October, that Paul and Sam and the guys were reporting that it was a possibility. I don't understand how it's not out sooner. I think you make a great point with the inventory, John. I think when you look at one thing that needs to be front of mind for owners and for fans, like I come back to this theme all the time in my work, like athletes are human. And it's going to be really difficult if you're asking these guys to play 60 games a year plus national team games or whatever. So that's something that also needs to be taken into account. It's easier to ask for 2 more episodes of Ted Lasso and wedge them into the season because you can film a TV show and do extra episodes in a week or 2, from my understanding. Whereas to play a 90-minute soccer game, you need 22 plus subs, guys running around, giving their all, and then recovering. And if the product is bad, if League Cup is bad, like if the games on the field suck, like we're not going to watch them because we're going to be like, that was bad. So, I think they have to be careful about diminishing their investment. And I do wonder if at some point, like we're both saying, maybe there's sort of a course correction to say, hey, okay, this is how it's going to work, where we can keep player safety top of mind, keep guys healthy, keep the product strong, and still give our TV partners what they want as far as revenue and owners the gate receipts.
Another couple of minutes with Jon Arnold, who getting CONCACAF and part of the FC Dallas broadcast crew. Fully recommend, if you don't subscribe, to get the man's newsletter because he's on top of everything, and it's a tremendous read. There, I've said it. There's your blatant plug because I'm a part of the family that subscribes to the newsletter. Neville said, KFC, we're 7 days out from the first game of the season. We don't know the playoff format. I think that's poor when you're talking about professionalism and elite. I think when you're 7 days out from the start of the season, we've had talks here. One of our players asked one of the MLS guys the other day, what's the playoff system? And they were like, we don't know. And I'm like, that's not elite. You're talking about differences between the UK and the US. We talked about the intensity of the fans, big difference. So that was what Neville said in this. And I think that what it also lends itself to, hopefully, is, once again, you're hoping that these TV series, Leagues Cup, MLS Next Pro, that these TV series are successful enough where you can expand your cap or dispose of it altogether, even though I know that's way out there, but expand your cap, maybe add another DP, because if you have 50 episodes of a TV series, which is what these teams are evolving into now, if you have a run in Open Cup, if you have a run in Leagues Cup, if you have a run in the playoffs, you have a 50-episode TV series for an MLS team, you're going to need more resources available to you. You're going to need more actors who can act, so you're not seeing the same plot lines over and over again and the series gets stale. At least that's what my hope is here.
Yeah, I think that, it's you have to, and even if you want to keep up with Liga MX, and if you want to try and really strike a blow at some of the mid-tier European leagues, yeah, like it is about the spending, right? It is about the amount of money being invested and about which owners want to do that and which owners don't, and who has the power and where that balance is. But I think, with the kind of purview of covering CONCACAF, I see what Mexican owners are doing. I see what Costa Rican owners and presidents are doing. In a lot of ways, like MLS is doing a lot right. And I do think this Apple deal is potentially a new frontier. You gotta, if the money comes in, you gotta reinvest it, right? So we'll see.
Getting into CONCACAF before we go. 6 teams in the Women's World Cup. I thought that was fantastic news for the Federation.
Absolutely. I think it's very easy to say that CONCACAF women's soccer is on top and simply point to the US as the reigning world champions and Canada as the gold medalists. And of course, the historic nature of those programs, how many times the US has been world champions, how many times Canada has competed. I think what we see with these 6 teams, and Mexico not being one of them, by the way, despite the fact that 70,000 fans are showing up for Liga MX femenil matches and that these women are developing into top-level pros and they're starting to see exportation from Liga MX, sometimes to NWSL, other times to leagues in Europe. The fact that Mexico isn't even included, and yet 6 teams from CONCACAF are in, that matches Asia, which has the host, Australia, New Zealand. And is only short of Europe because of the number of berths, because of the number of countries, I think is a real statement that women's soccer in CONCACAF is on top that it is strong, and not just because of the top-heavy nature. You're seeing investment from federations like Panama, which qualified last night with a win over Paraguay. And you're seeing women like the Haitian team sometimes say, we're not getting much support, but we're going to freaking do it because we want to. We want to represent our nation, fly our flag. And the fact that they're going to be there, and I think the fact that 2 of the 3 teams that came out of this 10-team playoff are from CONCACAF, that they did it on the field, I think is significant. Something to remember as well when the actual tournament starts, because both Haiti and Panama have difficult draws, have difficult groups. It's possible that, Haiti's first game is against England, reigning Euro champions, a potential World Cup favorite. It's going to be really difficult for them not to get beaten by several goals, potentially blown out, as we've seen in other early round games of Women's World Cups in the past. When those happen, remember, they played to get here. They did get here through what they did on the field, and they deserve to be here. They went through the slot. I don't need to pre-apologize for Haiti. Maybe they'll go out and beat England, right? It's totally possible. We've seen it on the field of play. I just think, it's something worth remembering that these CONCACAF teams are doing it on the field. Then you add in the CONCACAF Women's Gold Cup starting for the first ever time, the first ever Women's Nation League, and inviting the South American teams, which CONCACAF just beat 2 of, to that Gold Cup as part of the collaboration with CONMEBOL. I think it strengthens women's soccer in the Americas, and the more that the U.S. women, the Canadian women, and look, the Costa Rican women, and now the Panamanian women and Haitian women and Jamaican back-to-back, the more they can serve as an example, the higher the level of competition is raised in the entire region, and the better we'll be able to enjoy as fans, and the better women will have opportunities as players. So the 6 teams, I think it's a monumental achievement.
And this is why I love to have you on the show when we can have you on the show, because the energy just permeates through the screen when we get to have these kinds of discussions. Go ahead and let everybody know, how they can keep up with everything CONCACAF with you, with the tremendous work that you do there. And when they want to listen to what's going on with FC Dallas, how do they do that?
Yeah, so the newsletter is at getconcacaf.substack.com. Just like the CONCACAF region, everything is just a little too complicated. So you can just Google Get CONCACAF and it should pop up, or Bing, or whatever you're into these days. 3 issues a week, 2 for premium subscribers only. It's $50 a year for the premium subscription, which John has so kindly endorsed. And then the FC Dallas broadcast, you can check it out on fcdallas.com. And if you're in the DFW area, it is on the terrestrial radio, which is cool. I mean, people are driving around listening to the radio still. So tune us in. The call sign is on the FC Dallas website. So fcdallas.com, and the broadcast schedule, I think, is up there. But like I said, hopefully people can check it out. If the Apple TV, some of the voices on there are great. I think Followell has the first game. Mark Followell, beloved voice here in Dallas. So if you're curious for a few minutes and then you switch back to Followell, I understand. But he's not going to be on all the games, so you're going to want to switch over in the future. But we'll look forward to bringing the radio call, be in your eyes in the stadium, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So hope people check that out.
And thank you for being a part of the golden ticket crash with a curling gold medalist.
Anytime somebody with an Olympic medal shows up, I always, I'm happy to fire a few questions and take a back seat.
Jon Arnold at Arnold, John on the Twitters. Thanks for hanging out, my friend. As I said, golden ticket status anytime you want to crash. That's what we're here for. It'll be great to catch you. And
you'll be seeing me, man. Take care.
Be good. There's John, and it's great to see him. And we went a little over. Yes, yeah, Kefsy, no doubt. Feel the burn. Before we go, once again, let you know about tomorrow. And tomorrow is pretty normal with activity that we've got. Once again, 9 o'clock, we'll get you ready with the Atlanta United preview. 9:30, our friends from Beyond Goals. And 10 o'clock starts the weekend whip around where we go through every single match. And I know that, Ropes, you have asked about perhaps doing a fantasy segment in there. What I would probably ask, once again, as we get in there in the morning, is to put your starting lineups in. We can all sit there and compare and contrast starting lineups and sit there and run smack on each other already. But once again, in the Twitch pitch is the link to get into the league if you have not signed up for the fantasy league this year. And once again, tell your friends to get into the fantasy league. Very, very cool stuff with the Jason Wright Agency. Jason Wright, AGEN on the Twitters. So one other note that happened before we go, and it gives me the chance to perhaps let everybody know what's going on. It's like, wait a second. Okay, here it is. We got headlines. And so this means that we get to do, well, it's like you think that take it up to, well, let's see what happens here. We'll really blow people out. Breaking news out of the Premier League. Rodrigo Betancourt not expected to return until November at the earliest, as the midfielder has had surgery on his ACL. Dietmar Hamann, that's from our friends at TalkSport. Dietmar Hamann says Liverpool need 3 or 4 more midfielders, suggests a Declan Rice transfer. Newcastle star Kieran Trippier claims Manchester United's Marcus Rashford is the world's most informed player ahead of the Gummy Bear Cup final. And Rashford and Jadon Sancho started, but the big Anthony decision for Erik ten Hag, the lineup for the Barcelona Europa League second leg, those lineups should be coming out in the next half hour. The white paper came out. And that's the other thing that we haven't talked about. It's the white paper. Okay, so Ricky has posted in the Twitch pitch 2 more free-to-play prediction games out, parlays and predictors and picks, and you can get 10 grand in prizes. So we'll keep an eye on that. But the white paper came out that probably was going to anger a lot of folks, or at least it was scheduled to come out today, and discuss how the UK needs an independent regulator. So you're looking at government selecting the members in the regulator, understanding 10 to 20 people, probably form an office within the government building. But the point is, it will be independent of football, no third-party involvement of anyone involved in football. It will be a government appointment. So the white paper came out trying to figure out what we're looking at here. Football is going to be regulated, according to Garrett Hughes from Sky Sports News. Somebody will have significant power. They can block what certain clubs may want to do and bring in policies. They'll have oversight on the Premier League and EFL's owners and directors tests. They'll have the power to block clubs from joining any breakaway leagues. They'll have greater representation for the fans. 2 things. The government feel that football, and this is Garrett Hughes again from Sky Sports News, the government feel that football as an industry from top to bottom can't communicate and agree on things, especially around financial sustainability, i.e. the money that comes from the top of the game filters down the pyramid. The government have given the Premier League and the EFL plenty of time to agree. Once again, this is Garrett Hughes talking. To agree to it, and they haven't managed to do it. Therefore, the threat of a regulator being there needs to come in so they can actually have a meaningful dialogue. The other reason, the government reason, is doing politics. Very visible piece of legislation seen as populist opportunism, trying to grab the attention of people who love football, meaning the supporters, people who see the idea of an independent regulator as kind of unnecessary, and they're doing it for political gain. Questions that were asked, it would not affect the Manchester United takeover. No one has pointed at a flaw in the owners and directors test that the Premier League have at the moment. Premier League already have 17 amendments to their current owners and directors test, which will be voted through in the coming months. Depends on how long the United takeover will take. Independent regulator won't be up and running officially for another 12 to 18 months until the 24-25 season. Will not necessarily have an effect on the Manchester United takeover. Investigation into Manchester City, once again, it won't have an effect because of the time scale. The white paper is published, but it'll take some time for the process to become legislation. Anything short term, within the next 12 months, will not be affected by the process. So the white paper produced by the British government, having an independent regulator for the game, nothing should be affected over the next 12 to 18 months, and then everything will go from there. Other headlines, you're looking at Erik ten Hag and what he is being able to try and accomplish at Manchester United over the next 2 weeks. We have the last 16 draw made available in Europa League. That'll be 12 o'clock Friday. So tomorrow, in 23 hours, you're going to have the last 16 draw at UEFA headquarters in Switzerland. So you're going to have the UEFA League coming up. Their draw will happen tomorrow afternoon at noon. So Ricky's posting games. Don't forget to join the Fantasy League. a lot of expansion talk in Major League Soccer. Everything's going on with the new contract with Apple TV Plus, and so it was a great wide-ranging conversation today. And I want to thank all you guys for hanging out with us. And programming note, Nico Moreno and Thursdays with Nico is going to be on at the top of the hour. So we're going to be live again at noon for a half an hour with Nico Moreno. And Nico will give us his perspective on things. So just when you thought we were done, we're done for about 45 minutes here on Twitch. And then we'll be back with Thursdays with Nico coming up at noon. And then you can take a breath. And everything will be reposted and up on the network in short order. So once again, thanks to Jon Arnold, John. Thanks to Glenn Davis. Thanks to Lucas Panzica. And thanks to John Shuster. It's not every day that you get a gold medal winner crashing into a show, and Shuster did just exactly that. So thanks to all of them for a Thursday as we get to kind of bounce around and preview some of the parts of the Western Conference. And once again, tomorrow will be a normal show with the weekend whip around starting at 9:05. So for everybody who joined in this morning, thanks to all of you guys for joining in this morning, and we will see you Friday morning, 9:05. So for everybody here, it's the end of the show. Mucho plati, I'll play it safe. And since it is the end of the show, that means I get to do this. We'll see you at noon Eastern on Twitch.